Two.
All right, welcome in everybody to the Sideline Fantasy Radio Show. It is me, E Rock, joined by my co-host Krim, and we are also joined today by other league member Dave, Mr. Charger Boys himself. Welcome in, welcome in. How we doing today, gentlemen? Tonight?
Not too bad. Looking forward to getting the dub tomorrow.
Yeah, we'll see about that. How we doing, Dave?
Oh, not too bad the same way. Just hoping the Chargers were a little bit better this year, but, well, it's always next year.
Yeah, all our teams are struggling. That happens. So, we are now in week number 12 of the fantasy football season. Only 13 weeks in the regular season for our league. So we are literally down to the wire. And again, we've been saying it the last couple weeks. It is crazy to see that there is not a single team eliminated from playoff contention. Now, Peter has basically stuck a fork in himself, but for the most part, nobody's out of it. I mean, we've been us three, privately outside of the show, have been discussing all the different playoff scenarios and this and that. Jay's last in our division, but all he needs to do is win out and have Dave lose one game, and he would have the tiebreaker over Dave. So Jay's last in our division, Peter's last in theirs, but everyone still has a shot heading into these last 2 weeks of the year, and it's going to get exciting. There's a whole lot of what ifs we can go over, and we might go over some of those towards the end of the show. But first, real quick, let's break down the matchups, and then we'll talk about kind of the state of the league. So no trades, obviously. Trade deadline's been passed, so your teams are your teams at this point. The first matchup is going to be me, E-Rock, versus Dave. So we're both here today to kind of discuss that one. I'm projected for the most points in the league. Dave got off to a pretty good start. He decided to rock Jonathan Williams. A little bit of a risk, but it paid off for him. He got 19 points, put up a really solid ball game. We'll start with you, Dave. Do you like your chances in this matchup?
I think I do. It just depends how Julio and Michael Thomas do. And if they get like maybe 15 or less, I feel like I'm definitely in it. And honestly, I feel like it comes down to that Monday matchup against Baltimore and LA. I think if Lamar Jackson has 15 or less, I think I have a good shot.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be huge. You're going to be rooting for your Chargers and rooting against Lamar Jackson. So
yeah, obviously the other LA team though.
Right. Oh yeah, for sure. Oh yeah, the Rams. Yeah, that makes sense. And you do have a Ram on your team. You're going to roll with Everett. It seems to be to this point so far because Kittle is questionable at this point. But yeah, I think that's a big one as well. Green Bay's gotten torched on the ground this year. I think Tevin Coleman could be a big matchup there as well. I think you're right. I mean, all signs point to Julio Jones going off against Tampa Bay, but sometimes those games just always bite you right in the butt, and that might not be the case. Who knows? Michael Thomas against Carolina is not a bad matchup either. Jacobs against New York and Bell against Oakland. That's a game definitely to watch out with them both going against each other there. On the other side, Philip Lindsay against Buffalo might be a tough matchup. Winston, you just never know. Is he going to be the interception machine that he is? Shark against a pretty good Tennessee defense. I don't know. Dave's projected for 107, which actually is it's actually one of the highest projections in the league. In fact, looking at the rest of the projections, he's projected for the third highest scoring team this week, but he's going against me, who is by far and away the highest projected score. Krim, what's your take on this matchup?
Before I kind of get into I guess I'll do it afterwards, but I do obviously see Dave got off to a good start on Thursdays, which can either make or break your team, like I've said all year long, with Williams there. I mean, if you didn't kind of roll with him and you're kind of stuck with, Jones, who wouldn't be awful, but clearly ain't getting 20 points for you more than likely. Obviously, you have the advantage, I feel, matchup-wise with those receivers and running backs. Dave kind of has to live with Marvin Jones with that Fiscal guy as his quarterback, who hasn't been awful. He's been pretty solid, actually, surprisingly. So
yeah,
Marvin Jones didn't take too big of a hit this, with Stafford being out and all. But, projections point towards you winning the game. Obviously, I hope that you do win the game. But I do think that it is pretty big for that Monday night game to happen just because Lamar and Everett can kind of, change the tide. But just getting the one thing here for you, Dave. With Kittle potentially missing, I think, his third or fourth straight game, how do you feel about making that trade ever since that, kind of went down?
Ooh.
Actually, he is probably going to play, but he's going to possibly be like limited, like Ty wasn't Thursday. So I'm just going to go the safer option and just go Everett and just hope he gets, I don't know, 5 to 10 points, something reasonable. But I do feel like I have a lot of boom or bust players. But I know I honestly think Eric has the best team in the league, even though Dana has the best record. But we'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, I mean, there's something. Well, what do you think of that, Krim? Do you think I'm starting to creep around as one of the best teams in the league, or Dave said the best team in the league?
Obviously up there, but I wouldn't necessarily say the best team in the league, only because if you're looking at a team, on paper, obviously you have more star power than most teams. Production-wise, I don't really feel like your team has been playing to their full potential even at all this year. So it's scary to say that, but at the same time, if I haven't seen them do that, I'm not going to base it off of the fact that they can, but I just have not seen it.
Yeah, there's been a lot of times, and I've kind of mentioned this to you guys in the past. There's been I want to say 5 out of the last 6 weeks, honestly, I've been projected for the most points heading into each week. And not every week I get there. But projection-wise, I'm always around 120, always around 120. And I'm kind of noticing around the league these last couple weeks, I don't know if it's matchups or what, but there's really not a whole lot of teams that are projected for 100 and higher, which usually is the case in a PPR league. Obviously, you have a lot of teams projected for like mid-90s, but there's really not a lot of teams projected for over 100. I mean, this might be one of those weeks where Dave puts up 115, 120 and loses, and he would have beaten everyone else in the league. I mean, it could shape up to be one of those weeks.
I will say if you score over 110, I probably won't win. I just feel like that's how my team is. If I can keep it, or if your team keeps it under there, I have a shot.
I think one of the other things to look at too is Matt Breida is doubtful, so it does look like Tevin Coleman will get the bulk of that. Will get the bulk of that share, so I don't have to worry too much about splitting carries there. Hopefully, but we'll see. All right, let's move on to the next matchup here. Brother versus brother. It's basically an elimination game. Both teams
go brother.
Yeah, both teams basically need a win here. Trey's 4-7. He had someone go already in Duke Johnson, who only got him 3.5. Only projected for 86. Krim, you should be in line for the win here. You have some favorable matchups. You should hang on this week and win your 4th in a row. How you feeling?
Pretty good. Obviously, if you've checked the chat, much better after Thursday. And when I took out Jordan Wilkins, who I think saw the field total of no staffs, so getting that big fat 0 on Thursday would have sucked. I would have hated that, but looking at it and it's in a whole.
Caught your brother on his bye too.
Yeah, that's the thing too, is that catching people on these late buys. Obviously, when you're drafting a team, you kind of think to yourself, "Oh, if I'm gonna hit a bye week or a death week of buys or whatever for certain weeks, like Dave, for instance, is also this week with the Chargers. If he had Rivers, it'd be obviously more so, but he kind of came to his senses and dropped Rivers at this point in the season. But
he's still really good though.
No. You think to yourself that you can kind of get away from those games. I feel like they're easier to get away from taking a loss and kind of recouping that during weeks like 6, 7, 8, whatever. At this point in the year, it's tough to kind of have to fight through those buys and not have the depth that teams need. Clearly, Trey doesn't have that as he's playing Nick Foles, having to run Taylor Gabriel out there. Clearly, all year having to run Duke Johnson just because, someone's out or he just doesn't really have the running back firepower to do so. So, I mean, I'm feeling okay. I mean, looking at my team right now, projected to win by a decent margin, so I can't really complain.
Yeah, and we'll get into what every team has to do afterwards, but I don't really think, without getting too deep into it, you really can't very much afford a loss here, right? I mean, you have to win.
Yeah, I have to win out. So
yeah, any thoughts on this matchup, Dave? I know it almost looks like I don't want to say it's in the bag already. Anything can happen in fantasy, but anything stick out to you?
Yeah, I wouldn't say a given. I mean, if somehow Gurley and Carson can keep it close with Fournette and McCaffrey, I'm still not really totally sold on Crowder, even though he's been doing really well. And Brake could easily have 0. And Renfro, he's been okay. I don't know. I would just say if for Trey's side, if the running backs are close, he has a shot.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, if they can keep that pace, especially with the way McCaffrey and Fournette have been playing, that would be huge because Fournette the last couple of times out hasn't reached 10. So if he can do that again, that'd be big for Trey. All right, next matchup is Jay versus Dana. Again, interestingly enough, Dana's not put in a kicker yet. He really doesn't have any incentive to win or lose here. His undefeated season's done. He's got the bye. So I actually don't know if he will play a kicker because he doesn't want to risk dropping someone. So this might come back to actually hurt you guys if Jay wins this one, because right now Jay's already got 24 with Hyde and Fuller, which I would say between those two, getting 24 isn't bad. Now, obviously, you would have liked a bigger game from Hyde, but 24 from the two of them is not a bad total. Right now, projections have it 96.5 for Jay, 96.1 for Dana. And this could be a really big game when we start talking about tiebreakers, and I don't think Dana's going to throw in a kicker. So what do you guys think about this matchup? We'll start with you this time, Dave. What, you see anything kind of key here?
It's mostly on Jay's side. He has a lot of, like, I don't know, I would say average players, but yeah, and I mean, it's somewhat been working out for him, and some weeks he's been not great in points wise. So again, I still favor Dana, but if, like, for example, Metcalf can get like 15, Parker 15, I mean, it just depends how they play, of course. But the more I think about it, I do favor Dana's side a lot more. But I'm hoping Dana wins for my sake, because he had Jay has the tiebreaker. But we'll see how it is.
Yeah, honestly, the thing I look at a lot here is Russell Wilson's going to be good, but playing that Philly defense, the secondary is pretty bad. But if Russell Wilson can stay under 20, Derek Carr against the Jets is a really popular choice this week. If he can go somehow for 25-30, Jay's in a really, really good position. But Devin Singletary, his yards per carry has been fantastic this year, but they're just not giving him a lot of carries. He did get 15 last week. I think if Singletary can somehow break loose for a couple touchdowns and get like that 20-25 point game that he's kind of been waiting to do all year, that could be one of the difference makers as well. Any last thoughts on this one, Crimmy?
Yeah, I mean, I look down at Jay's team. Obviously, again, a win here helps me, but we'll get into that later. I do see, obviously, a kind of band of misfits, per se, but a lot of times when we see those things happen in, like, movies and stuff like that, they kind of prevail and somehow, give themselves a chance to do, whatever it is they put their minds to. So it wouldn't surprise me if Jay somehow some way stole a win here, just to kind of keep things interesting, just because the season's been kind of running that course the entire time. Letting Dave sweat a little bit and having to go into that final week, and a lot kind of at stake at that point. So
it probably will.
Yeah, I don't really see, like Dave said, I don't really see a whole lot of, sticking out for Jay, but clearly somebody does with the projections being the way they are.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So Jay's off to a decent start. Like I said, it's projected to be very, very close. I think Derek Carr is going to be big. If he scores 15 or less, Jay loses. If he can somehow throw out 20, 25 plus, that might be one of the X factors there.
I will say, though, with the Steelers playing Cincinnati, I could easily see the Steelers getting like 20 plus, and that could possibly win the matchup that way.
Yeah, we don't really look at the defenses too much. That is true. And the Patriots, who've obviously been by far and away the best defense of the year, do play Dallas, who might hang around in that one. So, and they got some offensive playmakers, so we'll see. Next matchup is going to be Tyler versus Chad. And, each week I try to look at a couple of the big matchups. Every matchup is so significant, you really can't say one is bigger than the other. I mean, you really can't. Even this one, Tyler has to win out to make the playoffs. He's lost 4 in a row after starting off 4-3. And Chad just had a huge, huge start. I think Chad was actually projected to lose, and Deshaun Watson and Hopkins get him a combined 43. Hopkins finally kind of broke out. That's his third 20-point performance of the season. Big game for him. Hines only got 7 for Tyler, and there's part of me, with him being a Redskins fan, with Adrian Peterson being banged up, I'm very surprised he didn't go Darius Geis, especially after getting 13 last week. So that might come back to haunt him here. We will see there. But honestly, Zeke has not been. I know Zeke's the 5th best fantasy running back this year, but even still, I feel like he's been a little bit down over the course of the year. I mean, still great, but a little bit down, and now he's going to go against the number one defense in the league, and I think that's what's going to hurt him. I really think Tyler's missing that guy that you can look at that's going to get 30 points. I don't see anyone on his team that can go out there and put up a 30-point performance, or even 25. I think that's the difference. Krim, we'll start with you. What do you see?
Yeah, obviously I see a lot of points on the side of Chad when it comes to Watson and Hopkins. So obviously got off to a good start there. I don't really see anything wrong here for Chad's team. I feel like it's in the best position to win, especially. I mean, I wouldn't say especially. His running backs obviously scare me, but if Hill's in a game where he's going to start and get the same amount of carries he got last week, he's getting enough volume to be viable. So obviously playing him there isn't awful, especially against. Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay is
Chad's
rough.
Running backs, Hill and Balaji. I mean, how about that?
Tampa Bay is rough.
Very sketch.
So that is very sketch, but just the Balaji is okay against Cleveland. You'll get the work, so it's not an awful play. I mean, obviously we don't know if Chad really doesn't have any more options, man. Like it's just Cook and Eckler going on a bye, so that could cost him. It wouldn't cost him a lot, obviously. He's in a good spot.
Bye's up for grabs. That's the big thing. And yeah, the bye's up for grabs, and that's the big thing because last week Chad somehow pulled the win off Trey because Trey only put up 82 because of the injuries to the Chiefs players. That would have been huge. Chad's still in line for the bye, but you guys are right. I mean, he's got to put in Balaji and
Bryce Hill.
Yeah, and Bryce Hill. And the thing with that is, honestly, I wouldn't have guessed. I know Watson and Hopkins are a great duo. Against that Indianapolis defense, I wouldn't have guessed they would have gotten 43 combined. And I think him getting off to such that big of a start, that might be the difference maker because I actually thought Tyler had a pretty good shot heading in. But with him not starting Geis and going Hopkins and Watson putting up 43, I think it's an uphill climb for Tyler. Dave, What are your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely on that. I'm also looking at Odell Beckham. He's been absolutely, I wouldn't say terrible, been very, very average all year. I mean, if he can get 15 to 20, I think the matchup's absolutely over. But I would agree. But with Hill and Balaj, I could easily see them getting like 15 combined. And Ertz will probably do his thing. Woods probably will do his thing. I'm just looking at Beckham. If Beckham has a good game, I think this matchup's over. But I do see, I do see Tyler possibly having a shot. It's just he has that upfield slide. It's just gonna be tough for him.
Yeah, especially in Balaji's case. I mean, if that Cleveland's not great, but Miami's so bad that if Cleveland gets up big on him, Balaji, I mean, he could put up a freaking dud of 2 or 3. And if that Atlanta-Tampa game gets as high scoring as we think, who knows how involved Hill will be. So, yeah, you're right. I mean, both those could put up a dud and make this one interesting. Next matchup is going to be Kyle versus Peter. Like I said, Peter's not out of it, but he's pretty much the most out of it out of any team in the league right now. Kyle did get 3 points from T.Y. Hilton, which obviously is not what you'd expect. This game is actually Peter's to lose according to the projections, though. 104 for Peter. Kyle is going to be in the playoffs, but he's still fighting for that bye. So he's hoping Chad loses. If Chad wins and Kyle loses here, the bye is over. So Kyle won't have much to play for next week. But in terms of this right now, Peter, yeah, we think he's done, but projections have him in it right now. Dave, what do you think?
I'm still probably favoring Kyle on this. I'm actually kind of looking at Chris Godwin. He's been very, 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 very average for the last, I would say, 4 or 5 weeks. He needs to get back on track. And then also looking on Peter's side, I don't know, his wide receivers, even though Tate and Gallup are good, they can be very hit or miss as well. So I think it will come down to the running backs with Mixon and Barkley. I feel like they'll be more solid than Samuels and Kamara. But again, they could probably even out as well. So I feel like this is going to be very close. So it's kind of hard to tell for me.
Yeah, I think this is actually, weirdly as it sounds, with the records and everything, I think this is one of the hardest ones to call just based on matchups because Baker against Miami, there's Peter yet again going with the Baker train, picked up and drop. I think Kamara and Samuels should get a lot of volume. We'll see how they do. I've always been a big fan of Gallup, but going against New England's going to be tough. And then on the other end, you're right. Godwin hasn't been great as of late. Lockett should be good, but I do think that Philly-Seattle game will remain close. I don't see it being super duper high scoring, and who knows what you're going to get out of Mixon. And even Barkley, as good as he is playing that Bears defense. So this one really is a really, really tough one to call for me. Krim?
Yeah, I'm in the same boat as you guys. I mean, so obviously I'd give Peter the edge if I had to give anybody an edge just because of Baker playing that Miami defense. We all obviously have seen how the Miami defense and the quarterback combined can kind of give you the week on its own. So I don't really like Kyle's running back situation. Like you said, Barkley has been pretty, I'd say, pedestrian, to say the least. This year, you haven't really seen like the same Barkley we were kind of used to with all these, big plays and so hard to take down and whatever. I mean, we've seen him do those things, but not successfully as much as he was last year. So that, getting him at that number 2 spot, essentially for Kyle, since he traded him early on this year, hasn't really panned out. And Mixon playing the Steelers defense, that obviously at full health, that defense is pretty solid right now. So it's kind of a toss up there. But I do like what I see from Peter's quarterback. I kind of think that gives him the edge here this week. But outside of that, not a lot to like about these two teams at all.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, it's that's going to be one of the hardest ones for sure. All right, so moving on to the last matchup, we have Tori versus Rob. And again, no matchup is bigger than another one, but it's very, very simple for Rob. Rob wins, and he clinches that last playoff spot in that division. It's that simple. It's over. Capiche, kaboom. That's it. But he got off to a 13-point performance with Brissett, which isn't all that great. That is a low number for a fantasy quarterback there. Tori is actually projected at this very moment to only lose by 2. If she wins, well, here's the situation, which we'll get into more deeper after we're done talking. Tori needs Tyler to lose. Now, we all said Tyler's not quite out of it yet, but it's looking like he will lose. So if Tori wins, you got a 3-way tie in the division, and Rob and Tyler play each other next week, and it's going to get very, very interesting. So Tori needs to win, obviously, to stay in. All Rob needs to do is win to get in, and then next week becomes very uneventful for the rest of that division. But after that 13-point performance, Dave, does Tori have a shot at winning this one?
I actually believe not. I feel like this might be the more lopsiding game of the week. I just look at Scarborough. I know everyone's been hyping him up the whole week, but I'm just not seeing it. It's a Lions running back. You don't know what they'll get. Ridley will be fine. Adams will be fine. I'm always scared about Michelle, but I think Derrick Henry's going to go off. Mike Evans, you know what he does. I just feel like this might be a 20, 30-point win for Rob.
Yeah, I do see where he's got more higher ceiling guys. Henry can go off for 20, 25. Who knows if Hunt gets heavily involved against Miami? I could see him getting a touchdown on the ground and a touchdown through the air, on little dump passes. Mike Evans against Atlanta, yeah, that's going to be a big one as well. Do you agree with Dave's assessment, Krim, or are you going to give Tori a better shot than he is?
I'd give Tori a better shot than Dave does. I wouldn't necessarily say that Rob comes in and wins this game by 20 or 30. The big thing here for me, I know her running back is Bo Scarborough, but they are playing the Washington Redskins.
Yeah, that could be a big factor.
Pretty bad this year, so I don't think that you can really rule anybody out just because of the sheer volume he'll get. I mean, we've seen that team have McKissick and Ty Johnson, available to be used, and both those guys really are not utilized whatsoever. They kind of run with Bo, so if he's going to be the guy getting those carries, that's the guy I want out of that backfield. But it comes down to Rodgers and Devontae. If those guys can actually put up a performance like we saw on Thursday.
He has no touchdowns this year. And our big buddy Dana says he's the greatest touchdown reception person in the league. Remember, beginning of the year, 15, 16, count it. I know he's missed a few games. I mean, he's missed 4, but even still, he's played in 6 games. He has not been in the end zone yet.
Yeah, which is crazy to look at. I mean, just because if you look at his games, 5.6 against the Bears week 1, obviously in the 10-3 win, you're not going to see a lot. But Week 2 against Minnesota, 106 yards, 14 points. You score that week, you're putting up 20. That looks looking real good. Denver, 56 yards. You score that week, you're putting up 13.
Yeah, he's really just missing those touchdowns. Yeah.
Philly, 23 points. You score a touchdown there, you're at 31, and you're looking disgustingly good. So that's tough. And a lot of the games he's missed, though, I feel like are games where he would have scored. Dallas, kind of a coin toss. But Detroit, you're scoring. I can almost guarantee you're scoring in that game. Oakland, you're scoring in that game. Kansas City, you're scoring in that game. So he really kind of had to come in and play against teams who were going to key in on him more so. They have the players to do so. Like the Chargers obviously have a solid secondary, even without Derwin James, although they don't look like they do. And they actually play games. Carolina, he went off, didn't score, but still went off. Off this bye, now we see him in San Fran. He'll probably get shadowed by Richard Sherman and whatnot. But that's the big thing for Torrey. If Rodgers and Devontae can turn back time, show us what they've done last year, the year before.
And that's a big game. I mean, it's one of those things where if Devontae has 102 touchdowns, that could very well just give Torrey the win right there. But it's crazy to think that I think her team isn't like that bad, and she's not had that connection all year. I mean, Aaron Rodgers himself has barely been a top 10 quarterback in fantasy this year. I mean, there's been times where she's lost because Rodgers just hasn't done that great. I mean, he's putting up a good statistical season in real life, but in terms of fantasy, it's not there. I will say I am with Dave in terms of the Sony Michel thing. I think that Dallas New England game could be very grindy, punt back and forth. The question is, does New England get into the goal line situation at the 1 or 2 yard line and punch it into Michel? Because I don't see this being a game where he's going to run for 85, 90 on the ground. He's either going to have 35, 40 yards and 2 touchdowns, or he's going to have 35, 40 yards and no touchdowns. And I think that could be a key, as Dave pointed out as well.
But at the same time, too, with the game like a grindy game like that, he's kind of the guy that you want to grind it out with. You're not going to use a James White. Now, it sucks because he's in a backfield where you would say he's that guy, but also can get caught behind a Brandon Bolden, a Rex Burkhead. Like, there's so many options there that they can grind it out with that he could kind of get lost in the shuffle there. But if they do decide he's their guy for that game, I feel like he's in a good spot just because, again, it's a volume play for Torrey at that point.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
I also will chime in about the flex position of both teams. John Brown and Brandon Cooks. John Brown's been pretty solid all year.
Yeah,
and Brandon Cooks is coming back from an injury. So if it's close and John Brown has a good game and then Brandon Cooks somehow goes out again with an injury, I could see Torrey definitely having a shot if Brandon Cooks has a bad game.
Yeah, I mean, week 1, if you would have saw that flex matchup, you'd have taken Brandon Cooks 100 out of 100 times. But John Brown, sneakily, has been the 13th best receiver in all of fantasy this year, which almost puts him at a wide receiver number 1. I mean, he was helped out a lot by that 30-point performance last week, but he really has been the definition of a really solid flex this year. And he's done a pretty good job of that, so that's a good point for sure. With that being said, that does go over our matchups for this week. Obviously, we don't know who's going to win or who's going to lose, but taking a look at the standings right now, Division 1, Dana's in. He was in last week. He did take that loss, though. Big props to Torrey. I'm 7-4. Although I'm not clinched, I'm feeling pretty safe, but stuff could go haywire quickly. So I don't want to say I'm for sure in yet. But Dave, you're 5-6. How confident are you that you are going to make it 5 years in a row making the playoffs? Or is your streak going to get snapped?
It's 50-50 right now. It just depends how I play this week, and I play Dana next week. And, again, all 3 teams, like Trey, Jay, and Jordan, Krim, they're all right there. So it literally just comes down to week-to-week thing. We'll see what happens tomorrow.
Now, do you think, looking at based on what you know about your team and stuff, do you feel like your team, if they get in, has a chance to make a run? Obviously, it's fantasy football and anything can happen. But do you feel confident in this team, or are you just going to be happy to get in the dance and have a chance?
I mean, obviously, I'd like to keep my streak going, but I really do feel like I have a shot. I mean, of course, I have the 2 Charger boys, so you got to believe in that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think even though I've made some dumb trades, I made some good trades throughout the year. I feel like I'm content with this team, and I feel like they can at least compete in the playoffs if they do make it.
And that's what I find kind of funny too, is the fact that you and Krim made all those trades at the beginning of the year. You know, the big draft day trades, and a couple days later the Zeke trade and all this and that. And it's you two basically fighting it out at the end for the playoff spot. So it's almost kind of like it's not like a who ended up coming out at the better end of the deal type of thing, but in a sense it kind of is, because one of you is getting in more than likely, one of you is not getting in. And for the rest of eternity, whenever we talk about this, that whoever got in can say, well, the trades worked out for me, for better or worse. So it's kind of funny how it worked out that way, that you two were the ones going back and forth with all these players, and now it's down to you two for that last spot. I will say this, Dave, if you do somehow lose this week to me, do you feel confident going into week 17 against Dane with your Charger players back, or do you think it's going to be an uphill battle?
It probably will most likely be an uphill battle, but I just need you to take care of business next week against Krim, and we'll see what happens.
All right, sounds good. Now, are any of you counting Jay out? Because, like it's pointed out, he has a tiebreaker over both of you, correct?
No, not I've defeated him. So the only person that would need to be threatening would be Dave.
Okay, so the only way he could get in is you'd have to lose both times. He'd have to win both times, and Dave would have to lose once. So Jay could get in if he wins both. Dave only wins once, and you lose. You'd have to lose both.
Yeah.
Okay. So Jay's not technically out of it, but he's still got some hope there. All right. Krim, kind of same questions to you. I with your winning streak that you've had and the points that you've been putting up and some of the losses you've had, I would feel very upset if I'm you if I don't get in with that roster. I'm not saying one roster is better than the other, but it's one of those things. Looking at your roster and looking how many points you've put up this year and everything you've gone through, losing games when you put up 130 and all this, I would feel upset if I didn't get in with the roster that you've had for a good majority of the season.
Yeah, I mean, it sucks, but obviously at the same time, it's fantasy. Like, I can't sit here and say, I can't sit here and say, if I had won this game, that game, this game, that game, I would get in. But it comes down to a couple things. I mean, obviously that Aaron Jones 4-touchdown game against Dana, when I thought I had that game kind of locked in, makes a big difference. It puts me at, right at this point, 6-5 as opposed to 5-6. And that game against Chad that I lost by, I think, 0.4 or something like that. Less than a point for sure. So then at that point, I win that, I'm 7-3, and I'm sitting, or 7-4, I'm sitting where you're at. So, that happens, and the season kind of rolls around, and we'll see, kind of play it week to week. I don't sit there and look at things, 4 weeks ahead, but I do think I'm pretty confident in myself. Obviously, I don't have as much pressure as Dave would, with Jay kind of biting at the heels of him somehow staying alive with his team being the lowest scoring team, who hasn't even cracked 1,000 points yet. Well, yeah. Peter's been the lowest scoring team, but Jay's kind of had 2 solid weeks the last 2 weeks, I think, or something like that. He's put up more points than we thought. So his team obviously isn't going to die off that easily. But I'm pretty confident in what I got going on.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny, too, because one of the things, as you guys know, I like looking at is the breakdown, because it basically determines how well you would have done against the rest of the league. And no surprise, Dana's out in front. Chad is second. I'm clinging behind in third. Rob's in fourth, and I will get to the other division here in a second talking about that. Rob's team has done really, really well the last few weeks. I'm looking at the breakdown. Crimmy is in fifth, and basically the way I look at it is, if you're in the top 6, you should have made the playoffs, but it just didn't work out your way, because that proves that you're one of the top 6 teams. Well, Dave is 7th, and Kyle's hanging in there in 6th. Dave could pass Kyle this week. Crim's in 5th right now, a few games up on Kyle. So based off what this says, you should be in the playoffs, Crim, and at this point, you don't control your own destiny. So that's tough. That really is tough there. And I think Kyle's team the last few weeks is, and again, we're going to get to the other division in a second here, but Kyle's team the last few weeks has gotten me a little nervous, making me think it might not be as good as we thought it was. But looking at the other division quickly, the bye is still up for grabs. Chad won that one last week, which was huge because both teams could be 7-4 right now. He's got 160 more points than Kyle. I do think Chad will hold on to the bye. But how do you think there's a shot that Kyle can somehow get that bye, Dave?
Probably not. And I was looking at both rosters to see who I feel is better on paper, I feel. And I would probably give the slight edge to Chad, but I feel like it's really close. So even though if whoever gets the bye and who doesn't, they're gonna be a force in the playoffs, and we'll see what happens down the road.
Let me ask you guys this: with how on fire Rob's team has been, is there either of you that would go as far as to say Rob's team is actually better than Kyle's? Krem? Because Rob's team has 75 more points than Kyle. They've been winning more lately than Kyle. Looking at his team, is anyone going to go off and say, Mike Evans, Hunt, Henry, DJ Moore, obviously you have Shu Smith, Juju on the bench, and Connor on the bench being out right now, Evan Engram out on the bench. I mean, fully healthy, I wouldn't go as far as to say that Rob's team isn't better than Kyle's possibly.
Yeah, I think that Rob's team is more upside than Kyle's team, but I do think that Kyle's team is more reliable.
Yeah, and I think Barkley coming back full health is important. And I think another one, I think Dave pointed out, I think Godwin getting back to what Godwin does. The last 4 weeks, he's kind of been disappointing for him. And I think Darren Waller's another one you got to look at. Darren Waller got off to a really, really good start, and he's kind of been a little shaky as of late as well. I know you just said you think Chad's going to hold on for that bye week, and you think you'd give a slight edge to Chad's team over Kyle's in terms of who's the better team. But would you say Rob's team is better than Kyle's, Dave, or are you still rocking with Kyle on that one?
I would probably still rock with Kyle on that. I'm kind of glad Rob did trade me Melvin Gordon, but I felt like if he kept on to Melvin Gordon, even though I am very biased about the Chargers, of course, I feel like his team would be better than would be better overall if he still kept on to Melvin Gordon.
Especially with the way he's been playing, yeah.
Yeah, and Juju, again, I've been very low on Juju since like week 3, and again, he's out. So again, I feel like if he didn't make that trade, I would definitely put him possibly ahead or right there with Kyle.
Yeah, for sure, no doubt about it. Yeah, I mean it's gonna be an interesting finish, like I said. And the other situation is, and I kind of spoke on it a little bit earlier. If Rob wins one, he's in. Very simple. Tori to get in needs Tyler to lose this week, her to win, and then she needs to win next week and have Tyler win. Okay, because she would have the tiebreaker over Tyler. Then Tyler needs to just win out and have Tori lose next week. So there's a lot of what ifs going on right now, and we're going to get hopefully a much clearer picture after this week of the playoff race. For all we know, we might not get a clear picture. What if Trey and Jay win and Krim and Dave lose? I mean, we really, with the way the matchups are, we could have a 3-way tie for the third playoff spot again after this week, and we'll have to try to uncluster that up again. So it's going to be really, really interesting here. Krim feels like he's in a must-win. With who Dave plays next week, it kind of feels like a must-win. Dave's end of the season schedule going against me and Dana, that's going to be tough. So if he does get in, it's well-deserved. And he's, like I said, he's the only player in the league that's made the playoffs every year. So trying to keep that streak 0-4 in the playoffs. So he's made it every year and lost. But
we got to keep it going. Got to make the playoffs and lose in the playoffs. Let's keep it going.
There you go. Any other kind of thoughts or ideas or anything that anyone wanted to bring up before we wrapped up here?
Yeah, Dave needs to be worried. He's got the toughest schedule coming, into this spot other than the year. So, I'd be a little scared.
Yeah, I'll just say good luck to everyone, and hopefully Krim loses, and I'll just say that.
Yeah, I mean, and it's funny too because I don't want to look at projections a week out again, but it is kind of crazy. And guys, when it comes to my fantasy team, even in the beginning of the year, I didn't even predict my team to make the playoffs just because I don't like touting my own team up. But again, next week I am projected for the most points again with 120. and no one else has 110. And I do play you next week, Krimwai. So maybe after this week, if stuff happens, it might be you that needs to be a little scared. You know what I'm saying? So it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be fun. Any last thoughts for you, Dave? Or are you good to go?
I'm good to go, but it was enjoyable. Thanks for letting me have a chance to talk a little bit here.
Oh yeah, for sure. Anytime. So yeah, good luck to all your fantasy teams this week. It was fun. Like I said, next week we're gonna have a much clearer picture, hopefully, where we can really break it down and say this team needs to do this and this team needs to do that. Hopefully it's simple for us. Hopefully we don't have to do too much thinking because I don't like doing that. But anyway, thanks for tuning in, guys. Good luck to all your fantasy teams except for Dave, because that's who I play this week. So
Go Chargers.
Have a good week and enjoy your football weekend, guys. Take care.